I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode 14 of Tales from Godric's Hollow. Apparently, the world's #1 Harry Potter podcast. I can't say for sure, I can't confirm or deny that. I'm just telling you what I've heard. I report on just rumors and speculation. No facts here on this podcast. I am the Muggle co-host of the show. I am Josh Brown. I am joined by the man who's on vacation, but still dedicated enough to do this podcast with me tonight for you guys listening at home, the professor of the show, Matt Sonnenberg.
I wouldn't miss it for the world.
I tried to miss it.
You did. You did. You've been trying to dodge me for the past 2 days and running away to sporting events that don't even count for anything. And
look, preseason basketball, Matt, means a lot in the grand scheme of things.
what? They're the only games your team can win, or something? Or?
Well, I mean, I was on the court.
Okay.
Literally on the court. Nobody in front of me except the basketball players and the referees.
Uh-huh.
Not really seats you could pass up on. Also, in my defense, you kind of didn't tell me that you were running away on vacation until after I brought up the fact that we might need to bump it.
Well, that's because I had my Monday night worked out for you. It wasn't going to be a problem.
Right, but you have to take into consideration that I'm bound to change things on a whim.
It had worked for 13 episodes. How am I supposed to know? Oh, episode 14, it could be different.
Because I felt like you were too comfortable in the schedule, Matt. Anyway, we're here. We're doing this.
We are.
It's going to be fun. We are recording this on Tuesday, October 4th, 2016. We are covering the 5th and 6th chapters of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. We have read through them. For new listeners out there, welcome and hello. I am taking this adventure on for the first time. I have never read any Harry Potter books before we started this podcast. I had only kind of sort of seen the first movie beforehand, but it didn't really click with me, so I wasn't paying attention. So we have decided, because of Matt and his amazing skills at peer pressure, to record a podcast as I slowly read through the books, a couple chapters at a time, and for the first time, for first time, and going into it, I was cautiously optimistic. I had hoped for the best, but went in with the understanding of, we might get through one book and this isn't going to be a thing here. And let me tell you something here, Matt.
Yeah.
And I think I tell you this every week, but I think the listening audience needs to know this. I don't want to stop reading ever.
Yep.
You keep picking chapters to end with that make me want to know what's going to happen next.
Hey, it's not just me. That's the way the books are written.
Yeah, kind of. But
I would almost have a hard time finding a chapter that didn't want you, that you wouldn't want to keep reading more.
I mean, yeah, possibly. That might be true. But like this week particular, if we had just read chapter 5, perfect, done. Like, okay, I could put that aside for a week,
Yeah.
But then, like, chapter 6 was its own thing, and then, and then it ends, and it's like, oh man, what? This is another cliffhanger.
Well, I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah. I feel like you've tricked me into this somehow.
Anything I can do to get you to keep reading.
Yeah. Well, you've been successful so far. It's been fun. This book is fascinating. It's a little frustrating at times because of the consistent recaps of things we already know. I picked up on that in these last couple chapters as well.
Yep.
But
Yep.
it's also Harry back at Hogwarts. This is the first time he's been back to school since the first book. So I understand there is some recap of things, but at the same, again, I've said it before, and I'll keep saying it until it's proven that it's not true. I just hope that it's not as consistent of recaps in the following books as it is in this book. So, I don't need to be reminded what the four houses are.
Yeah, it's understandable.
Sure.
I
I mean,
I totally get where you're coming from.
some people might have needed that reminder. By books 4, 5, 6, like, we don't need to recap. These are the four houses, and this is the bad house that shouldn't be in Hogwarts anyway, because it's just going to make bad witches and wizards, and it's going to screw everything up in the ecosystem. So,
Like I think we've mentioned at least once, I know that you have to remember when this book was written, the only other Harry Potter material that existed was book 1.
right.
So this is book 2. It's
Sure.
still relatively new to everybody.
Yeah.
So a few reminders could be good.
Right.
I mean, yes, we said we're almost 20 years later, 18 or whatever it is. And yeah, the vast majority of people in the world, even our Muggle world, know what the four houses are and the other minor details of the Harry Potter world.
Sure.
But I think we said the first movie didn't come out until after the 4th book. And so once you get that second medium for Harry Potter to be introduced to other people,
Mm-hmm.
I think once you hit that point, for sure, you kind of can assume people know more
Right.
than you could with just 2 books.
Yeah, fair enough. It's just, I just shrug and kind of shake my head every time I get to, like, those few sentences sprinkled
I
in
know.
throughout the chapters.
But like you said, it's just a few sentences.
Yeah.
You kind of breeze by them a little bit. You can be pretty confident there's no new details in there that you're going to miss out on.
Part of me feels like she's just going to throw me a curveball one of these times and, like, make it seem like she's about to drop, like, a recap and then completely change what I thought I had remembered, and then just make me question the entire thing.
And at the same time, you have told me that there have been a few instances that a character or a characteristic of somebody has been brought up, and you thought it was brand new information.
That's true.
And it's been mentioned before.
Mm-hmm.
So it could go either way.
Sure.
I know we're talking about like the basic details of Hogwarts and Harry Potter universe, but it's possible.
Yep, definitely. So before we get into actually reading the book, and even my world famous recap of last week's show, a couple things I want to talk about real briefly here, because we don't really have any other time to talk about this kind of stuff.
Sure.
Harry Potter content in the new Lego Dimensions video game.
Yes.
I was concerned about playing it. I was worried about spoiling something for myself. I would have thrown caution to the wind and jumped right in if we had not already started this podcast and I didn't know anything about it, and I would have just enjoyed it for what it was and moved on about my business. Now, because I can't stop thinking about Harry Potter, and anytime I see something in reference to Harry Potter, I'm trying to put puzzle pieces together that may not even fit the puzzle I'm trying to solve. I was worried going into this game and this content that something was just going to just completely throw me for a loop or ruin something big. You promised to go ahead and play it before I dove into it to check it out, and your assessment of the Harry Potter content is?
Well, for Harry Potter fans, it's a great thing. If you know what's going on, you're going to very much appreciate what's in that level or what's in that adventure world. thankfully, I guess, for you, that also means that if you don't necessarily know what's going on in the Harry Potter world, you won't necessarily understand and appreciate everything quite as much.
Right.
And therefore, it makes it, in my opinion, and a few people that I talked with, safe for you to play.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the content goes, I very much enjoy it. I still haven't completed everything in the adventure world, but I've explored pretty much all of it. And like I told you, they basically touch on every book.
Sure.
In some way, shape or form. There's a lot of huge landmark pieces in there, and any fan, I think, is going to greatly enjoy the time and effort and thought they put into that adventure world.
Right. And like you were explaining to me, it feels like it's more set pieces and characters and whatnot than pivotal story plot points.
Yeah, there will be some characters a lot of characters you haven't met yet.
Sure.
There are like set pieces. I mean, okay, so the Hogwarts castle is there.
Right. It's
not going to give you too much away. I can tell you that there's a house that will, if you complete all the quests in the adventure world, you'll find out it's a magical house. But it won't mean anything to you.
Right.
Like, you won't know why it's magical or why it's important or why it's in this level until we get to that point in the book.
Sure.
Because they don't sit there and explain it to you. They're assuming you are a Harry Potter fan. That's why you bought this pack, and so here you go. This is something you already know.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's something I'm kind of oddly excited for, is to run into all these things that I have no context for, and either one, start trying to like write my own fanfic inside my head about what these people are and what they're doing and where they're at, and two, tuck them away in the back of my mind so that when they do pop up in the book, I have an immediate reference point to something that I know is a thing, and then I'll start putting some context behind familiar names and places. So
sure.
I feel pretty good about not spoiling. I'm going to go in still a little cautious. I'm not just going to just go completely wild with it. I have, however, played with Harry and Voldemort, the minifigs, as characters, but not in the Harry Potter adventure world yet, just as characters.
Yeah.
I do know that Harry's, one of his attacks in the game, he shoots some ghost out of his wand. I don't know what that's about. So, I'm assuming that's going to be a thing at some point.
Oh yeah, we'll get there.
Yeah. Voldemort sounds super creepy, but nothing I've picked up on his actions has really, spoiled anything. I mean, obviously, I know there's a giant battle with him and Harry towards the end of the series. That's kind of, been foretold since the beginning book, but
yeah, there's a lot of things you can assume are going to happen, and so I can't stop that. As far as like Voldemort's moves, there's one move in there, kind of like Harry's move that you pointed out, that is kind of particular to that character.
Mm-hmm.
But until you know what it means or what it does, it's not really that special.
Right. Yeah. So I'm seeing things happen. I don't know what it means. I know it's some sort of magical abilities at this point. I just assume whatever's happening is just meant to be. So that's the status with the Lego Dimensions. We've talked about it in the show a couple different times now. So that's kind of where I stand with that. Second thing I wanted to talk about, Matt, is the newest trailer for Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Yes.
AKA Josh's favorite movie of 2016.
Yeah. It's going to be exciting.
Wow.
I'm greatly, greatly looking forward to this movie.
Yeah. It looks like
Um,
a lot of fun.
like I know I've told you, I don't think I've mentioned it on the podcast, but I don't really go to see movies in theaters anymore. Um, the last movie I saw in theaters was Star Wars Episode 7.
Sure. I mean, who didn't see it in theaters?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Prior to that, though, I hadn't been to the movie theater in 4 years.
Okay.
So it it I just don't feel the need anymore to spend my money and time doing that.
Sure.
I see movies eventually, usually when they hit Redbox.
Yeah.
It sounds good to me. I'll pay $1 and both my wife and I can watch it.
Mhm.
That sounds reasonable to me. Um,
Or if you're really getting, jonesing for a particular movie, you could usually rent it from like Amazon for a couple bucks a month
Sure.
before Redbox. Like,
sure.
that's an option these days. And
Yeah, but basically that brings it down to how much I'm looking forward to this movie.
right.
Is I am seeing this in theaters.
Mhm.
If there's a midnight showing, I plan on going.
Sure.
If there's not, I will see it opening day, whatever that may be. Well, November 18th. I know when that is, actually.
Yeah.
But once again, that goes to show I know when it comes out. I don't pay attention to that stuff anymore.
Sure.
I just don't, because I know I'm not going to see it in the theater, so it doesn't matter most of the time.
Right.
But this movie, absolutely looking forward to.
And really, midnight showings these days are like 8 p.m. the
Yeah.
night before. So, I mean, for,
It
us
actually
old
comes out on
guys.
November 17th
Right.
at noon.
We're getting old, Matt. And,
Yeah.
midnight just comes and goes these days. And going out and doing things at midnight doesn't seem super appealing. But you give me an 8 o'clock showing of a movie, I'm going to be there.
Yep.
So, man, I just... And I mean, one of the reasons why, and people still speculate with me that I'm just like being facetious and don't really want to see this movie as much as I say I do.
Sure.
I really do. And one of the reasons why is kind of the opposite reason of why I am frustrated with like the recaps and frustrated with not being able to just absorb all of this content at once is because
Yep.
of the podcast.
Yep.
This is a movie that, sure, I guess there's a book that's, it's based on or whatever, but it not in the series, official series,
Yep.
a spin-off type of thing. But I'm going to be able to indulge and just completely absorb some new Harry Potter content that's not going to ruin any continuity with what I have going on with the podcast here, that I will be doing alongside with other Harry Potter fans for the first time.
Yeah.
I haven't had that experience at all.
Exactly. You're going to get the chance to get in on the ground level.
Yeah.
You're gonna take the ride along with us. It's new for all of us. And as much as we all call it Harry Potter and refer to it as Harry Potter has nothing to do with it.
Right.
This is all pre-Harry Potter.
Exactly.
Like I heard some people asking or wondering or even disappointed when they heard that Harry Potter wasn't going to be in this movie. I'm like, it wouldn't make any sense. He hasn't been born yet at this time period. How would that work? Even in the magical world, you don't bring people from the future. I didn't quite understand. I guess I don't know if it was early on, before they really knew what the movie was about or something, that they didn't quite understand what was going on, and they just knew that it had something to do with Harry Potter because that's what everybody talked about. But in any case, Harry Potter's not in this film. It is more or less prequel, precursor. It's the same magical world, I guess you could say, as
Right.
Harry Potter,
Right.
but completely different cast.
Yeah. And It's in the USA,
It is.
so that's a bonus. No, like
No
even
more Philosopher's Stones.
right. Yeah, I hear with that nonsense. But yeah, like this is I get to experience something new and fresh with fans as they're experiencing it for the first time as well. Like even when we went to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter at Universal Studios,
Yeah.
with you and Jason, you guys had already been to the Wizarding World in Orlando, so like even that experience, this was pre-podcast.
Yep.
I still wasn't experiencing that with you guys who were experiencing it for the first time. Like you were both telling me, well, it's different in Orlando, and they have this in Orlando, and they have that in Orlando. It's like, man, I can't even like have this one little victory with you guys because you've already done that also, So
It's true.
it's the little victories I have to get, Matt, and I'm not going to have many of them, so I have to just completely enjoy the one that I'm going to have come November 18th or 17th.
Yeah.
It's going to be fun. And honestly, the trailer looks great. Like I don't know anything about any of those beasts. I don't know if anybody does that hasn't read the book.
Yeah, it depends how into it they've gotten. There has been a lot of background posted on Pottermore, and I've read most of it, so I'm kind of up on what's going on. But if you haven't touched Pottermore, you are basically in the dark, and what you see in the trailer is what probably the vast majority of people know.
Right. And in my head, like, I'm also thinking, I don't know how many of these beasts are in the series,
It's true. Yeah.
I mean, look at all the things that we've encountered so far, just in the first book, and it's like all these things are possible for all I know.
It feels like every week we're surprising you with a new creature.
Yeah. But it's just, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's so many different reasons why I'm excited for it, but I do want to like fully express in a non-joking way that I am 100% excited for this film, despite some sarcastic tones I may have given before. Yeah, I'm super stoked. This new trailer was just phenomenal.
I like it.
Yeah, blew me away. So that's what I wanted to get through before we start talking about this book here.
Okay.
Because we have a lot to cover tonight. Before that, though, I'm going to try to do a recap of last week's show, Matt.
Go for it.
Last week we did chapters 3 and 4 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. And they were very, very fun chapters, I thought, at least. We had Ron and the twins rescuing Harry from his horrible living situation in their flying car, which wasn't really their flying car. It's kind of their dad's flying car, and they kind of took it without telling their dad, who works for the ministry, who cracks down on wizards who turn muggle objects into magical things. But he also has cars and other items that he tinkers with and turns into magical items because he can't help it. That's his thing. It's his little hobby. Can't blame the guy. So anyway, the Weasley bros, they break Harry out of prison, essentially, and they take him back to their house, because where else is he going to go, right? He needed an escape. The Weasley household is called the Burrows. That's what they call it. I don't know if that's an official title or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
But it's home. It's home to the Weasleys, and that's just what they know is their home. But to Harry, it was probably the second most enchanting place he's ever been in his entire life, like next to Hogwarts. One, because it wasn't his house, and two, it was just filled with so many weird and quirky little things that are completely normal to the Weasleys at this point because they live with it day in and day out. But for Harry to see this kind of stuff in the Muggle world outside of Hogwarts and Diagon's Alley, like, this was a new experience for him. Yeah. And he absolutely loved it. Best part of the chapter, probably the best part of the series thus far was the denoming part where the boys went out in the garden per Mrs. Weasley's request and denomed the garden. Honestly, Matt, like I want to just fast forward through the reading of this book because I want to see the movie and I want this scene. For one, don't tell me, but if this scene isn't in the movie, I'm going to lose my mind because I need to see this in action. I am so stupidly excited to see a denoming visually that if they don't deliver, man, I'm gonna lose it. I don't know what I'm gonna do. So anyway, denoming's a thing. We got our first reference of Lockhart.
Yes.
Which we would come to find out later on is going to be a major character in this book, from what it seems. We got reintroduced to Ginny a little bit, the youngest of the Weasley kids. Who seems to be having a little bit of a crush on Harry, which is funny. It's hilarious. We kind of learned where the twins got their mischievousness from. Definitely their father, who seems like a pretty fun character to be around, but definitely does his very best to not anger Mrs. Weasley. She's very loving and compassionate, but you don't want to be on her bad side, ever. Kind of like Professor McGonagall, I assume. But yeah, just it was a fun chapter at the Burrows, learning about the Weasley house, and Ron being a little embarrassed by his house, but then letting loose a little bit when he realized that Harry just wasn't judging him and absolutely loved it there. It was nice. It was a really nice chapter. Chapter 4.
Just a second.
Yes.
Because I know someone will correct you eventually.
Sure.
Their house is just the Burrow.
The Burrow.
Singular.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
You may continue.
Fair enough. Chapter 4, we got right into learning about Gilderoy Lockhart, and he has quite a collection of books that he has written. Don't know what to think of that character yet. Mrs. Weasley, absolutely fascinated by him.
Yeah.
But his name was tossed around a few times. We got to learn about some old owls, and I was deeply concerned with their health and well-being.
You were.
We heard from Hermione. She wrote to him, and she was saying how excited she was for the school year to start, and she's been studying all summer, and Ron's like rolling his eyes like, of course she is, what else would she be doing? I think that's the most ridiculous statement for anyone to make because it's the most obvious thing. Then we got introduced to the flu powder.
Yes.
A way to travel from chimney to chimney, that the wizards and witches use. The Weasleys showed Harry how to use it. They kind of just threw him into the deep end and said swim, and he didn't do too bad. He wound up in the wrong spot, but I mean, he was close. He was like within a block of where he wanted to get to. Yep. They're trying to get to Diagon Alley. They needed to do back to school shopping, but he went to some old pawn shop that was kind of creepy. The Draco Malfoy and his father showed up, and he was trying to pawn off some things that he had because he was afraid that people were going to crack down on him for having objects that were graced with magic abilities. So he was trying to get rid of them, cover his tracks, essentially. We had, wow, the name totally just left me here. Hagrid. Hagrid came and rescued Harry from the dirty pawn shop. That was cool. We had, let's see. Hermione's parents were there. Hermione and her parents, her non-magical parents, they were kind of taken back by Diagon Alley, all in all. But it was cool to see them reacting to this magical place that they obviously don't spend much time in. Mr. Weasley was absolutely enamored with the Grangers because he loves Muggles. Like he has this weird affinity for Muggles, and I think he just likes learning about them and like using that for like his own little tinkering. But it's quite fun that he just latched onto him just immediately. We had a little Malfoy Weasley confrontation. Not quite sure what that's about, but I'm sure we'll get into that later on at some point. It doesn't seem like it was a one and done situation. Then back to the bank. Harry's richer than any one boy needs to be, but we kind of got another scene where Ron and the Weasleys were kind of shown to be like in poverty a little bit, and their family being poor was used against Ron and bullying, and that kind of sucks. But he has Harry as a best friend, and really Harry has his back no matter what. And it was reassuring to see that even when Ron is like feeling super down, he has people around him that could elevate him. So that was the chapter. Did I miss anything big and important?
I think that was about all the major points.
Awesome. And of course, that was going to lead into chapter 5, where I assume we're getting ready to go to Hogwarts.
Yep, that gives us chapter 5, titled "The Whomping Willow," which up front means absolutely nothing, but you find out by the end of the chapter.
Oh yeah.
As far as new characters, we do have 2 new mentions. Mrs. Hetty Bayliss and Mr. Angus Fleet. They were both Muggles that saw the car flying. They're mentioned in the newspaper. I'm just going to put it out there right now. Don't worry about remembering them.
Okay.
I think this is one of those opportunities. I don't know if it is actually specifically, but I know she did this from time to time. But J.K. Rowling would add in names of friends or acquaintances and that type of thing, to just either because they asked or because she wanted to, or whatever the case may be.
Sure.
I know some of the characters are either based on friends or sometimes enemies of hers, and sometimes even the names are used. So
Okay.
I kind of have a feeling that might be what these 2 are here. That's why they're mentioned by name.
Sure.
We,
I was racking my brain trying to remember if like they were people that we had met in the first book, and I couldn't place them. But
no, they're brand new names, and as far as I can recall, we never hear them again.
Okay.
So don't worry too much about them. They're just
stupid old Muggles.
There you go. Yeah. So that brings us right into the chapter, and they're basically packing up to go to Hogwarts right away.
Trying to leave. When you have a family that big,
Yep.
even leaving on a little trip to go like the train station is not an easy task to achieve.
Sure.
They left 3 or 4 times.
Yep.
And back because one of the kids kept forgetting something, naturally.
But they somehow all fit into one car.
It's bigger on the inside, Matt.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's bigger on the inside.
Mm-hmm.
That's like we've heard that before.
Yeah. I wonder where.
Okay. Anyway.
Also, I love Mrs. Weasley, like, kind of throwing little jabs at Muggles as if Muggles were even around to, like, to defend themselves. Like, they're just the butt of the joke sometimes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what they do. It's they're not the same. A lot of times they think they're inferior, or they do things the wrong way, or however the case may be.
Right. So they travel to the train station. Eventually, they get there.
Yep.
Now I had to stop and think because I couldn't remember if it was like described in the first book or even shown in the movie. The Weasleys helped show Harry how to get onto the platform because nobody was there to. No one had explained it to him how to get to 9 3/4.
Yep.
Um, but I couldn't remember if Mrs. Weasley had just let the boys go and she had said goodbye, or she actually went through herself.
You're talking about in the first book?
In the first book, yes. The
She,
first time they went to Hogwarts.
yeah, she goes through as well.
Okay, I couldn't remember that part. So when they were describing like Mr. Weasley going in first, and then Mrs. Weasley and Jenny going through, I stopped and I had to think about why the parents would be going through. And then I had to remember like there was a platform on the other side, and then that's when you board the train. Say goodbyes essentially.
Yep. In the first year, Mr. Weasley wasn't there, but Mrs. Weasley and Ginny also went through, and yeah, that's where they said their goodbyes and that sort of thing, and any last minute stuff, any magical stuff they needed to talk about, or whatever they had on their mind. It's much easier to do over on that platform than it would be in King's Cross Station.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, it just it was
that's nothing out of the ordinary.
sure. What was out of the ordinary was Ron and Harry not being able to go through the little gateway.
It's true.
That was weird.
Yeah.
They were running out of time. I mean, they were late, but they weren't that late. Now here's what I picked up on. Harry and Ron tried to go together at the same time when they got denied.
Sure.
And then Harry tried a second time, but just by himself.
Yeah.
I feel like Ron probably could have gone through by himself if he wasn't trying to go through with Harry. Whatever was blocking them, I think, was purposely blocking Harry, and Ron was just collateral damage.
Okay.
Something or someone was forcibly trying to keep Harry from going through there to get on the train to go to Hogwarts. Now, we've already seen a mysterious little creature trying to warn Harry of going back to Hogwarts. I think he might be involved in this in some way.
It's possible.
We don't know where he went.
No.
I assume he's still probably following Harry around somewhere.
For those who've not been following closely, we are referencing the one and only Dobby.
Yes, of course.
The house elf.
Yes.
But yeah, we have not seen or heard from him since he, performed magic at Harry's house and got him in trouble.
Right.
With the Ministry. Since then, yeah, he's been quite absent. Mm-hmm. So.
And Harry seemed to have kind of forgotten about him too, and it's been a month. I mean, he was at the Weasleys for a whole month.
Yep.
And he's seen all kinds of crazy things since then. So I'm sure Dobby's out of sight, out of mind type of thing. But he was trying to keep him from Hogwarts, and now the first magical barrier that Harry has to go to in order to get to Hogwarts, he can't go through. Like, no one's trying to keep Ron Weasley from going to Hogwarts. All the other Weasleys went through just fine.
Sure.
But it was the fact that it was purposely written to explain how they went through at the same time, or tried to go through at the same time. And then Harry tried. They never explained Ron trying to go through by himself, Yeah. So I'm going to say Dobby's behind this, or whoever Dobby works for is owned by is doing something.
Okay.
Just a theory out there.
Yeah. We'll pin that one up on the board.
Mm-hmm.
See if it comes back for us.
Yeah. So the rest of the Weasleys went through. They ran out of time. They knew the train was going to be leaving, because apparently that train leaves at the exact moment it says it's going to leave, without
on
hesitation.
time every time.
So that sucks for them.
Yeah.
Did they have other options, like maybe wait for Mr. and Mrs. Weasley to come back through and be like, hey, where'd you guys go? They could have.
Yep.
But we're talking about, 12-year-old boys here?
Exactly. 12-year-old boys, super frantic.
Yep.
I mean, especially Ron.
Yeah.
I think Harry by himself may have thought a bit more logically.
Right.
But Ron tends to panic a little bit.
A little bit. Well, I mean, look who his older brothers are.
Uh-huh.
We have Perfect Percy, and then we have the twins.
Yes.
The troublemaking twins. So when you have opposite ends of the spectrum as far as like good and bad behavior to use as your, guides and role models in life, you're all over the board as far as what you should be doing.
Yep. It gets a little confusing.
But you got to remember there's twins, and there's two of them, and they are very convincing about their ways and habits.
Yeah.
So instead of doing something
Rational,
it's a good word, they decided not to, and they threw caution to the wind, and they stole the car.
Yep. Two 12-year-old boys steal car.
Sure. I mean, Ron knew how to work it and operate it.
Sure.
Turned invisible so they wouldn't be seen as they flew through the air with the greatest of ease, following the Hogwarts Express to Hogwarts. They had it all worked out.
Yep.
They were going to dip in and out of the clouds so they could consistently check with the train. They had toffee stashed away in the glove compartment. They were on a road trip. 12-year-old boys, stolen car, candy, road trip. What could go wrong?
Well, your invisibility booster could fail.
Ooh, that's bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, can't have that. I mean, you're high above London here.
Yep.
Like, you're way up there. So, I mean, even if your invisibility booster goes out, you're still good, right?
Maybe.
You'd think. You'd hope so.
I'd hope so.
Yeah. A little bumpy road in the skies. At first, it was good. They were enjoying themselves. Apparently, it's a long drive to Hogwarts. I don't think the first book and the train ride there, definitely not the movie, accurately depicted how long of a trip it is.
Yeah.
From that station to Hogwarts.
You don't ever really get a good grasp of how long it is, but two things that you can pick up on. Harry's ticket, or or just in general, I think it's mentioned in the second book too. What time does the train leave?
Ooh, I don't know. I know it said it, but I can't remember.
I believe it's 11 a.m.
Okay, yeah, that sounds right.
And so it leaves at 11 a.m. And when they get there, it's always dark.
Right.
So,
I mean, unless we're talking daylight savings time here, I mean, probably
even,
at least,
even
what,
then,
6-7 hours?
In the middle of winter, you're looking at,
hours.
like 6 hours minimum.
Yeah.
But we know this isn't the middle of winter. It's the beginning of fall.
Right.
So, yeah, it's probably 7-8 hours.
Sure.
It's a full day excursion.
Yeah. Which, if you're on a train with your friends and, snack cart coming through with delicious pumpkin juice and all that kind of good stuff, no big deal. Time flies.
Yeah.
When you're having fun. But when you're driving that whole way, you got nothing to drink. You can't stop because you have to follow this train because you're not even sure where you're going. And you're not supposed to be in the car in the first place. Oh boy, that's a long trip.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Gets even worse though when your car starts breaking down.
Yeah. So I know it's written for the story, and it's magic, so we don't really have a good anything to measure this against. But what makes a magical car fail?
A lack of magic.
It actually consumes magic.
Possibly, yeah. I have a feeling like magic wears off if something is enchanted. I don't think it's like a permanent state of magic.
Okay.
I mean, Ron did use magic to start it up. He was using his wand and whatnot. There seems to be some as you get older, as you get more experienced at using magic, your magic becomes more powerful. So I don't know what kind of magic Ron is capable of using. I don't know if that had any effect on the car itself.
Sure.
But like Ron also threw out the fact that like this is the farthest the car has ever gone in one shot. So
yeah, it's true.
I mean, it's an old car. It's an old beat up car.
And previous to that, it went to pick up Harry and came back.
Right.
And other than that, we don't really know that it had ever actually been flown.
Sure.
Because that was the loophole in Mr. Weasley's law that he wrote was he can tinker with stuff as long as he didn't intend to use it.
Right. And Mrs. Weasley didn't even know it flew in the first place.
Yeah.
So I doubt he was like going out for, run to the store real quick in this flying car. So he may have like tested it. Like when the boys stole it to go capture Harry, like his first question instead of being mad was, how'd it run? You know, like he was excited to know how it went. I'm sure he knew that it worked, but he didn't know to what extent. I don't think.
He probably made it hover off the ground or something in the backyard, but
just enough so Mrs. Weasley didn't see.
Yeah.
Yeah. He waited until like she went to the store or something. So like if we're talking the 6, 7, 8 hour excursion in this thing that hasn't really ever been fully tested, it's bound to have some problems.
Sure.
So doesn't surprise me at all that it starts sputtering, engine starts going out. I mean, it's an old car. I don't think Mr. Weasley is a certified magical mechanic. He likes to tinker, like it's a little hobby, but it's definitely not a career of his to make cars fly. So how well it was built in the first place with the magic abilities, we're not even sure of. But I will say this, when Harry was describing how amazing the whole trip was at the beginning, and it was either him or Ron was saying how incredible it was going to be to have like this beautiful landing on the bright green grass lawn of Hogwarts and, just like make everybody like super jealous that they had this spectacular landing and, so flashy and whatnot. As soon as that was said, I was like, oh, that's not good. That's going to be bad.
Yep.
Yeah. A little foreshadowing there.
Sure.
And I saw it coming a mile away. They almost made it.
Almost.
So close.
Hey, thankfully, I'm just glad they made it to a solid ground and didn't like crash in the lake or something.
Yeah, because they kept talking about them being over the lake. I'm like, oh, there's a squid. Things are gonna happen in there. But they crashed into a tree. Which, obviously the car is gonna have some damage done to it.
Yep.
That wasn't the biggest issue with crashing in this tree.
No.
We found out what the Whomping Willow was.
Any old tree, yeah.
No. It's a fighting tree. It's an old, crusty fighting tree.
Yep.
I did not see that coming.
That's good.
Yeah.
That can be your creature for this week.
Again, Matt, like I feel like I have fully embraced the possibilities of all these weird little creatures, and I fully expect new beasts and creatures to pop up and to be just like, yep, that's the world we live in. And then we go and hit a fighting tree that just wants to just wail on people and just punch after punch with its branches, like it's making fists with its branches, and I did not see that coming.
You don't know how happy it makes me to hear you say stuff like that. Like this book can still surprise you. Awesome.
Yes.
And I honestly don't care if it's even just little things like a new creature every week.
Sure.
There you go, creature of the week. Wasn't that a thing back in like the 60s?
That sounds right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's it's definitely it's not even something that have I've ever heard of in any other kind of uh, mythology, fantasy, whatever. Like centaurs, we've heard of giants, we've heard of giant squids, we've heard of. Like, these things exist in other literature.
Right.
Have you ever heard of a Whomping Willow or even an well, okay, I guess we haven't had animated trees
Sure.
like Ents and those type of things, but
Well, like Lord of the Rings.
yeah,
Also, going back to Lego Dimensions, in the very first level of the game when you're at on the yellow brick road for Wizard of Oz, and you come across the trees that are
okay,
being aggressive.
yes,
My mind immediately went to that when I started reading about this fighting tree. I'm like, wait a second,
there you
were
go.
those trees actually in Wizard of Oz, or am I making that up in my head and they were just foretelling Harry Potter things? I don't even know which way is which anymore, Matt.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a very good point. That's probably the closest example.
Yeah,
Yeah, Wizard of Oz, the trees did throw apples at them.
sure. But
In
I had that moment of I can't remember if they're in Wizard of
yeah,
Oz.
especially when you're comparing it to Harry Potter now.
Sure. So yes, there have been examples before of like
Sure, sure.
trees that come to life and are willing to fight. But even the name of the chapter, I'm like, okay, Whomping Willow. I know what a willow is. I'm assuming it's going to be a tree. Um, but what's going to be special about this tree? Something's going to happen. Was not expecting them to get into a fight with a tree.
Yeah, to be honest, if I see the title The Whomping Willow, I expect it to be a tree that people like go and beat with a baseball bat.
Right.
Like you whomp on the willow or something. It's not a tree that comes to life and tries to hit you.
Sure. So they made it out of the car relatively safely. I mean, in one piece, essentially.
Yep.
Um,
At least the people are in one piece.
yeah. The car though, car got a little beat up,
Yep.
and I'm thinking, oh boy, they're in trouble. Someone's gonna come find this magical car. Uh, it's just absolutely totaled and destroyed. How are they going to explain this? I mean, obviously they have to explain how they got there in the first place because everybody knows they weren't on the train. So how'd they get there? But I'm like, well, there's the evidence right there. Is this flying car that they're not supposed to have in the first place? Then again, because I wasn't ready for it, and I'm stuck on this whole concept of a fighting tree, the car just decides to take off by itself. Like it's mad. It's like you just got me beat up. I am just demolished. I
Yep.
am mad at you. I am broken, and I'm gone.
Car drives off.
It just drives off, like just angrily too.
Yep. It threw them out of the car.
Yeah, and like shot some exhaust in their face, and it was like, "See ya."
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, good. At least the evidence is gone, right? Now they have to do, figure out how to get into the school
Yep.
without being seen.
Come up with a clever story.
Sure. With these boys, it's not going to happen. I'm at any moment, I'm expecting them to run across Neville Longbottom, who is just in the wrong place at the wrong time again, and he gets blamed for it somehow. That's where I'm at in my own head. Thankfully, that doesn't happen. Door's locked. They can't get in. I think it's locked. Did they actually try to open the door? Or are they just looking in?
No, they get into the school,
Okay.
but shortly after that, they don't get too far.
Right. They're checking out the sorting ceremony from afar.
Yep.
They're licking their lips at the thought of enjoying this fantastic feast that's about to happen in the Great Hall. I do like. I don't think this was like ever explained in the first book of the movie, but it was described how the ceiling of the Great Hall reflected the sky outside.
Um, it mentions that it looked like the sky, but I don't know that it ever mentioned that it was more or less, yeah, a reflection of what was going on outside.
Right. Because that's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
Like, the fact that if it's dark outside and it's clear night and
Yep.
there's stars, like that's
Yep.
what you're gonna see in the Great Hall, or in the morning sunshine. Like,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, it basically looks like it's an open roof, but you're protected from whatever elements may be out there.
Right. I love that. I love that description.
Yeah.
So they're looking at the table of professors. There's Dumbledore doing Dumbledore things, of course. Professor McGonagall looking probably very bitter and angry about something. Hagrid drinking, of course. But they notice there's an empty chair.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So I'm thinking, at first, I'm like, okay, that's probably Quirrell's chair. Because I can't imagine they brought him back somehow to be a professor anymore. But then it's described that the missing chair is Professor Snape's chair. Professor Snape's not there.
Yes. To clarify, you do know that Quirrell's dead, right?
Yes, that's what I mean. Like, they're not going to
Okay.
resurrect him and bring him back and be
okay.
like, "Hey, be a professor again." Yeah.
Just needed to clarify.
Sure. I don't. Yeah, when I said bring him back, I didn't mean like just rehire him. Like actually bring him back.
Yes.
Also, was it perfectly clear he was dead, or just like implied?
I believe Dumbledore, when he's talking with Harry at the end, says that Voldemort left him to die.
Okay. But, I mean, in this world, that means nothing.
Yeah, I suppose you could come to that conclusion.
But, yes, when I said that, I did mean, like, bring him back in a full resurrection.
Yes.
Sort of way.
And when you see it in the movie, too, the way they portray it, like, he crumbles to ashes.
Right.
Like, there's no coming back from that.
Sure. But that's what they thought about Voldemort, too. Just saying.
Yeah.
So anyway, Snape's not there. The boys are rejoicing a little bit. They're excited. They're theorizing. Maybe he left because he didn't get the Defense Against the Dark Arts job again. Then they're kind of hoping that he got fired. I mean, I don't know what grounds they would have to fire him. I mean, going back several episodes, I was all on board with the firing of this guy, but
sure,
he deserves to be there, I guess, as much as anybody, despite his personal vendettas that he may have. So they're kind of laughing and joking about this, and then lo and behold, who's right behind him? Of course, it's Snape.
Of course
it is.
Professor Snape.
Severus Snape. They said his name quite a bit in this chapter.
Yeah.
Like his first name specifically.
Yeah. It's a good name.
Not bad. Dragged him down to his office, down in the dungeons, because of course his office is in the dungeons. At first I'm like, wow, he's just going straight into just like lockup mode. Like, lock him down, bring him some bread and water later on and call him good. But no, it's his office.
Yep.
And they know they're in trouble. They know this is about to get real bad real fast. Professor McGonagall comes in. They have to explain to her what happened. She's not buying any of it. But then Dumbledore comes in. And that's when just the wheels came off the wagon here. And I thought it was perfectly explained how Harry would have been less upset if he was like angry and yelling. But the fact that he just came in and was disappointed in Harry, like that hurt even more.
Absolutely. Yep, that's the same note I made.
Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a strong feeling to have, you know.
Yep.
Harry really respects this guy. And he knows that Dumbledore has gone out of his way several times already to kind of protect him and bring him in under his wing. So to ruin that possible trust that he's gained would be
Yep.
bad. So um yeah, it was an interesting conversation that happened in that dungeon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes was right after they kind of get off easy, or at least easier than Snape would have liked.
Right.
Was Snape looked as though Christmas had been canceled.
Yes.
Like I'm not even sure I really see him reacting all that much to anything. Like he's always so angry and sour already. Like how would he look if Christmas was canceled?
Sure.
Or would he would he really care if Christmas was canceled?
I just like to think like that's like Christmas being canceled and Harry not being expelled are the two things that just make him like the most, you know, saddest, depressed he could possibly be.
Yeah.
Like those are the two things.
Sure.
Harry's not expelled, neither is Ron. They don't. I know they both tried to argue the point that they couldn't get through onto the platform.
Yep.
And neither McGonagall or Dumbledore seemed to really care about that point.
Yep.
It was more about stealing the flying car and, you know, doing things you know you should not do.
Yeah. It was all about teaching a lesson, and this is what you should not have done, and this is what you could have done instead.
Mm-hmm.
Like I very much appreciate McGonagall's first suggestion. It's like, well, you have an owl, don't you?
Right.
You could have sent us a met. That's why you have an owl.
And Harry's like, well, yeah, duh, of course, but in the moment.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, and that's what I'm saying. Like, if Harry was by himself, he may have come up with that. But when panicky Ron is right there on top of him, and it's like, oh, we gotta do something. What do we do? What do we do? And ooh, car.
Right. Let's do it. This is gonna be great.
Yeah, yeah. And your brain stops functioning at that point, and all right, pack everything up, including the owl, and off we go.
Right. So yeah, so no one seemed really intrigued.
No.
By the fact that they couldn't get onto the platform, and that makes me wonder if they know something also. I don't want to think that they are trying to keep Harry away from Hogwarts, because I think they want him there as much as anybody else. But they didn't seem curious about it.
Sure.
And I feel like that's something I would at least be curious about. Like if I was in their position, like, well, why couldn't you get through the platform? Like that's a pretty easy thing, you know? What were you doing wrong?
Well, at the same time though, how are they to know they're even telling the truth?
Right.
Not just making up another excuse. It's
That's
like,
true.
Well, we took the car because we couldn't get through. You know, what's to say they just, that wasn't their plan all along, is to take the car and make the big entrance.
Sure. I feel like maybe they earned just a slight bit of merit from last year in the great adventure that they went on that probably seemed unbelievable to most people.
Fair enough.
But I don't know. I was just like, I want to know more about why they couldn't get through this, and you guys don't even care about this. Like, I understand why you're upset, but I still feel like you should be exploring all the different circumstances of this case here.
Hey, and maybe they will later on. Maybe they'll touch on it. Maybe they'll come back to it. But for the time being,
sure,
there was a lot of wrongdoing going on, regardless of how you look at it.
Yeah.
So they had to take care of that, and they did.
Yeah. They had to get their punishment out. I understand it. So
yeah.
They got detention.
Yep.
They couldn't take points away because it technically happened before the school year started. And I think Harry was gloating a little bit when he brought up that point, but he was scared to death to say it.
Yep. There's a very good chance McGonagall was about to. Like she felt that she probably should, but
Right.
if I can explain it away like this, let's start off the year right.
Right.
So yeah, she definitely went for that.
Um, and then weird little thing. She left, some food and beverages for them to eat since they missed out on the feast. And I like the description of the plate kept refilling itself with sandwiches.
Yep.
That was a fun thing to think about. How that would visually look and how it would just be normal for them at this point.
Yeah.
Um, in this chapter, did they go back to the dormitory?
Um.
The two chapters kind of blended together.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm not sure which chapter it was actually. Yeah. Yeah. They did go back.
Okay. Did it end with them going to bed that night? The
Yep.
chapter. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. They got up to their room and well, then their roommates came in and wanted to talk to them, but
Right.
yeah.
They were heroes. Everybody at the school had heard what had happened.
Yep.
Many of them theorized they were going to be expelled, but like another legend has like been born around Harry Potter, the famous Harry Potter, and now, his sidekick Ron Weasley.
Yeah.
They just continue to tack on to this legacy,
Yep.
accidentally. They're not doing it intentionally.
Definitely not. Yeah.
Harry doesn't like the attention. Like, it's still weird to him.
Yep.
But Ron's still kind of digging it, though, because for once, like, he's standing out amongst
Yeah.
the other Weasleys.
He doesn't necessarily get it all that often, and now he has a story to tell.
Right. Hermione being Hermione, just mad and angry and that motherly figure to them, like
Yep.
kind of shaming them, but still like knowing like she can't really punish them, so she's just gonna be cold and bitter.
Silent treatment.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's what 12-year-olds do, right?
But the thing is, like, Ron enjoys that from her, so I don't
Yeah,
think
but-
she's caught on that. Like, that's not a
No.
punishment.
No, she it's the best she knows how to do.
Yeah. So it was fun to like to get this turnaround of, okay, they're being stupid 12-year-olds. Then they're fighting a tree. Then they're possibly going to be in serious trouble, and now like they're kind of heroes amongst their peers.
Yeah.
So kind of this whole big weird circle that they went around, and it was a fun little chapter.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Which brings us to our Muggle poll for the week. I asked, after the incident with the Whomping Willow and the repercussions that followed, or lack thereof in some cases, who do you feel more sorry for? And I actually gave him 4 choices.
Ooh.
The obvious choices are Harry or Ron,
Mm-hmm.
but they're more. I can't quite say people involved with this, but things involved with this. So I gave him the Whomping Willow
Yep.
and the car
Okay.
because they all had actions of their own too, somewhere in there. I'll run through this briefly. So Harry, basically, I guess you could say Ron dragged him into it.
Yeah.
And ended up getting, this more fame that he wasn't asking for, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
Ron, everything kind of went wrong for him, and like you hypothesized, it might have all been because of Harry.
Right.
And then in the end too, we didn't mention it yet, but Ron's wand got snapped in half
Mm-hmm.
when they crashed.
Right.
So that sucks.
Yeah.
Especially since he's not going to have the money to replace that or anything.
Right. And see, I was thinking about this.
Yep.
We touch about on the next chapter a little bit more, but you don't pick the wand picks you.
Yes.
Would a second wand pick you if you needed a replacement? Like, you couldn't get an exact replacement for that wand you had, right? Or could you?
In theory, no. Like, you could make it out of the same materials, but it would be a different wand.
Sure. Like Harry's wand has a tail feather from a phoenix.
Yeah, because it's a particular phoenix.
Right. So, like, you couldn't get that particular wand again, in theory.
Yeah.
So what if Harry's wand broke? Like, what do you do there? Like, so I guess my whole train of thought is, would the wands know that your first choice wand broke, so the next wand would have to step up and select to be Ron's wand, essentially?
I would say you could probably get a second wand to choose you, but it would never be able to perform quite as well as the original.
Right. I guess I just don't know how much consciousness those wands have.
Yeah. And we do learn more about wands and wand lore as we go along. I guess it's not super important right now, especially since, well, Ron doesn't necessarily get a new one right now.
Right.
But yeah, we'll keep an eye on that and see how that plays out.
Yes, I'm interested.
The Whomping Willow. This is drifting into chapter 6 a little bit, but we find out that they actually had to go and put some of his branches in slings. I know a lot of people who would definitely feel sorry for that tree.
Sure.
And then finally the car.
Right.
I was kind of discussing this with my wife throughout the week, and there are a lot of arguments you can make for the car.
Mm-hmm.
That it didn't choose to be flown. It didn't choose to crash. It got beat up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, essentially then it had to run away somewhere else. Because as far as we know, it can't fly right now, so it's not like it could just fly home.
Right.
So it's all beat up and dented, and it's all Ron and Harry and the tree's fault.
Yep.
So,
well, I'll tell you what I thought after you tell me what the people thought.
Yep. After?
After.
Okay, so the people definitely went with the car.
Okay.
We have a whopping 54% going for the car.
Sure.
25% for the tree, 15% for Ron, and 6% for Harry.
Wow. Harry got no love, huh?
No.
Wow.
No.
I guess people just expected better from him. He should have known better.
Well, I mean, like, as I was kind of going through that list, like, I couldn't come up with a lot to, feel sorry for him. Like, Ron and Harry were kind of on an equal playing field.
Yeah.
Except Ron's wand got snapped.
Sure.
And Harry's didn't. So you feel a little worse for Ron.
And that's only because Ron had it out because he was the one driving the thing.
Yeah.
He had to have his wand out and using it to get to that point in the first place.
Sure.
Yeah, like Harry and Ron both were excited to go on this journey when they started it. Like, they knew it was a bad decision, but like once they got started, they're like, this is amazing. Like they weren't having second thoughts about it. Like, they were just bored at the end. They weren't like regretting it and wanting to like pull over and call for help or anything. They're just like, this sucks. I'd rather be on a train, I don't want to keep driving.
Yep.
So yeah, no sympathy for them. They're dumb 12-year-old boys doing dumb 12-year-old boy things. So, the tree, I don't feel sorry for at all, Matt.
Yeah.
I feel like that tree's born to fight.
Yep.
I think it was waiting for a fight. Like, I don't think it gets challenged enough. And like the moment something even comes remotely close to it, it's like, oh, it's on now.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
I had the same exact feelings about the tree.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the car was modified. It's an old beat up car to begin with.
Sure.
It was tinkered around and modified to be to have this magic ability, but we don't know to what extent. We don't know how fully that was realized. It was not designed to go on an 8-hour trip through the sky using every magical function it has.
Yeah.
It was pushed to its absolute limit and then some. And it got, it finally it had enough. It had to go down. And then unfortunately it just went down at the wrong place at the wrong time. This tree wanted to fight, and the tree took it out on the car.
Yep.
Trying to get to the boys, but still the car was in its way, so it's going to do anything it can to get through it. And the car's just like, I'm out. I'm done. You guys, this sucked. This sucked all the way around for me. I'm glad you guys had a great trip. I'm glad we got here, but I'm out. See ya.
Sure.
Poor car. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's more or less where I ended up too. I voted for the car.
Yeah.
Yeah. As much as the tree got banged up, I don't feel sorry for it. It was probably the strongest thing there. If it wanted to, probably could have killed Harry and Ron.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, not feeling sorry for it. Yeah.
We agree then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Moving into chapter 6 then.
Yeah. We'll try to speed it up a little bit.
All right. We have Gilderoy. It's titled Gilderoy Lockhart,
Yes.
and we have one new character named Colin Creevy. Curious little boy, little first year, that likes to take pictures and seems to be Harry Potter's #1 fan.
Well, maybe #2 fan. I feel like Jenny probably has like Harry Potter posters like in her bedroom that like he doesn't even know exist at this point.
Okay.
Yeah. He's a Hufflepuff though, right? Or is he a Gryffindor?
No, I believe he's in Gryffindor.
Why in the world in my head was I placing him in Hufflepuff?
We get to talk to another Hufflepuff later on in the chapter.
Okay. Maybe that's why. I don't know. For some reason, this little kid struck me as a Hufflepuff. I don't know why. So,
Yep.
So what happens in this chapter, Matt?
The Howler.
Yes.
Ron gets a Howler.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I knew it was going to be bad from the start. Anything named a Howler just...
Yeah. My basic description is, if we had to put it in like our terms of what's going on here, I like to think of it as a voicemail that you get that is automatically put on speakerphone and then amplified through a megaphone.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just this blaring message from someone else that you know that you can't do anything about.
Right. And it's red and it's smoking from the corners and
Yes.
It was Neville who was saying how he waited to open one before and it just got worse and worse.
Yep.
Right? Typical Neville. Poor Ron. Like, he knew it was coming. But it's a fascinating way to get a voicemail from your mom.
Yeah. And it kind of does double duty because it gets your message across, but it does it in front of everybody else. And so there's bound to be some level of embarrassment there, which there kind of should be.
Right.
Yeah. Most people are going to feel some level of embarrassment, which makes it all that much worse, which is the whole point of it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And just coming from Mrs. Weasley, like that just... I feel like there's probably a lot of moms out there that relate to Mrs. Weasley, but that's just not a mom I'd want to be on bad terms with.
Sure.
She kind of laid into him.
Yeah, you've mentioned that a couple of times. You don't want to get on Mrs. Weasel's bad side, and uh, Ron managed to do it again.
Right. Um, so, Ron went back to, he went from like gloating and being kind of a hero amongst his peers to, I'm just going to hide because everybody in the school just heard my mom yell at me. So this
Yep.
sucks. Yeah. Um, what else happened here?
Um, well, then we kind of get into their first week of school.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we heard about the Whomping Willow that I mentioned. They fixed him up, put his branches in slings.
Not
Um,
just anybody.
well, Lockhart was there,
Yeah.
along with Professor Sprout,
Right.
the herbology teacher.
Uh-huh. He didn't want to upstage her. He didn't want to tell her how to do her job.
Yeah,
He didn't want
yeah,
to tell her that he could do it better, and he didn't want the students to think that he could do it better. But he knows some things from his international travels.
uh-huh.
Boy, oh boy, immediately. So he has like the aquamarine robe. They keep talking about like his perfect teeth.
Yep,
We've met him before, but like this chapter, I mean, the name of
yep,
the chapter is him,
yep.
which is kind of fitting because he's the most egotistical maniac possibly
Yes.
in this entire world.
Like I was, we the first time we met him, like we didn't really talk about him that much, and like I kind of wanted to, but then I kind of let it go and like, okay, we'll see more of him, and hopefully it'll drive it home just how self-absorbed he is, and I wanted to get your reaction there.
Yep.
And
Yep. I brought up this comparison to Val as we were reading afterwards, and kind of plays into like the end of the chapter. But I don't know if you've ever seen SpongeBob SquarePants, Matt.
I've seen a handful of episodes.
Sure.
I try to avoid them.
You don't have much reason to watch it. I understand. Not a big deal. There's a character in there. I don't know if you're familiar with, called Larry the Lobster.
Okay.
Larry the Lobster is this just giant lobster that walks around. Everybody knows Larry. He's super nice to everybody, but he's definitely a show off, and he doesn't. Sometimes it feels like he doesn't really understand that he's being super egotistical, but everybody keeps catering to his ego consistently,
Okay.
which just makes him more and more egotistical and the show off type. So, like, that was like the caricature I had in my head when reading about Lockhart, except for the fact that Larry the Lobster is actually as strong as he pretends to be, or as he like tries to display his strength, like when he's working out on the beach and pumping iron, like he's
Sure.
legitimately that strong and impressive.
Yes.
Lockhart is not as impressive as he tries to make himself out to be,
Uh-huh.
from basic what we know of him so far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we see later in this chapter.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so we get our first taste of Lockhart again. We'll come back to him in a minute here, but the mandrakes
Mm-hmm.
in the herbology lesson,
Yes.
um, almost our second creature of the week.
Mm-hmm. Now, see, last week I compared the garden gnomes to little Pikmin, right?
Yep.
I wish I hadn't used that, because this these are Pikmin. These are what I imagine Pikmin to be.
Okay.
So, like, I was mad at myself, like, reading this. I'm like, oh, well, I can't use that again, but that's exactly what they are. For some reason, though, because of the garden gnomes, these didn't seem that out of the ordinary, Matt.
Yeah.
These are just like, okay, cool. Little tiny babies with plants growing out of their head. Cool, that makes sense.
All right. I can give you that.
I'm sure you wanted me to be surprised by him, but it just wasn't. I'm like,
It's
okay,
fair.
that fits now.
Fair enough.
I do appreciate this is like our first real intimate get to know you session with this professor.
True.
I feel like
Very
she was
true.
mentioned in the first book and then just
Yep.
passed on by.
Yep.
So I appreciate this chapter, if only for the fact that we get to know her much better.
Yeah, we start to see as we go through all of the books. Really, we get to see some of the other classes and the other teachers and what they do and how they handle the classes. So yeah, that's always nice to see.
Yes.
Here is where we meet our other Hufflepuff, Justin Finch-Fletchley.
Oh, that's the Hufflepuff. Okay.
Yes,
I was confusing the two in my head.
yeah, he teams up with our trio, and oddly enough, seems to know all about them, all three of them, really.
Yeah.
Um,
Big fan.
yeah, which is kind of interesting, especially coming from a different house. But
Their reputation precedes them, Matt.
yeah, absolutely. I think like we see it more and more as we go along, but Harry is just more famous than he realizes.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's starting to kind of ooze over to his friends.
Right.
And they're kind of getting some of this recognition too because of all the things that either they do by themselves, but people pay attention because they're friends with Harry Potter,
Yeah.
or they're things that they do with Harry, and therefore their names come up too.
Yeah. And again, like, they're digging it. Like, Ron is kind of standing out amongst his brothers and now sister who's at the school.
Yes.
So he's enjoying that recognition.
Yep.
And we've known from day one that Hermione absolutely just thrives on positive attention and recognition for being smart and being educated and being a good student. So being recognized for that, that's all she needs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I do find interesting though, because like after the class too, then I think we get another instance of Lockhart. He just keeps popping up. We see how Hermione.
I just imagine him just being like, "Hey guys, what are you doing?" Like, just all the time. Like, just where are you coming from?
Yep. He just like, don't you have other classes to teach?
No other professor is around as much as he is.
No. He's just always there. But this allows us to see more and more too. Like I say, and how Hermione even is kind of I couldn't come up with a better word than infatuated with Lockhart.
Well, again, females are attracted to this guy.
Yeah, but as brainy and book smart as Hermione is, it just doesn't. It feels out of character,
Right.
and so it makes you wonder, like, well, in the Muggle world, I would say, what kind of spell has he got on him? But in the magical world, that's not necessarily out of the question, I guess.
Right.
So,
Something going on.
in my mind, definitely feels like it.
I mean, he's the 5-time best smile in the world champion. Not like he would ever talk about that, Matt.
No.
But he's quick to point it out at drop of a dime.
Uh-huh. This is also where we run into Colin Creevey, taking a picture, wants a picture, autographed picture of Harry. Here, I just want to note that we learn a little tidbit about the moving pictures,
Right.
how they work.
Mm-hmm.
And you just need to put the film in a special potion when you're developing it,
Right.
and they start moving.
Yeah.
Like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I like that. I like knowing that you just use regular film.
Yeah, I can just use your same old camera, but when you're developing it, that's where the magic happens.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. but then Lockhart takes Harry aside and he leads him off to his class, which is his next class. So he's not like, hey, Harry was headed there anyway. It's just
Right.
he has to deal with Lockhart the entire way there. And he gives him a quiz, pop quiz about his books.
I'm like, okay, so for one, he's impressed that everybody bought the books, the full set. And it's like, well,
Which was on.
it was required. You told
Yeah.
everybody before school started that they had to buy all these books. Don't pat
Yep.
him on the back for this.
Yep. That's Lockhart for you, though.
Yeah.
But then his quiz.
I'm thinking, okay, we're gonna get some interesting little tidbits from these books that he wrote, about all these different adventures and creatures and ways to deal with them, and like this is going to shed some light onto what wizards deal with in throughout the rest of the world when they're not like just at Hogwarts, practicing magic, like the real world application of this sort of thing.
Yep. But unfortunately, no. The quiz, all about Lockhart. There's nothing practical, nothing educational, just fun trivia facts about Professor Lockhart.
I was simultaneously rolling from laughter and just like shaking my head in disapproval reading this, because it was just like, this guy's too much. Like I can't even handle his ego. Like right now I'm just so mad at him, but it's hilarious how dense he is to the fact that he's so egotistical. Nobody cares what his favorite color is.
You wouldn't think so. But here's Hermione, who got she's read these books so thoroughly. For whatever reason, it still hasn't clicked that, this shouldn't matter to anybody. But she remembered it all because it was in the book.
And God forbid she has a bad test score.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
So she's able to impress Lockhart.
Yep.
And that's great for her.
Yeah.
She's liking that.
Yep. Attention. She likes it.
Yep. Then we move on in the lesson, and he introduces Cornish pixies,
Right.
which I don't know if you remember. You may have actually caught sight of these. There are actually Funko Pops of the Cornish pixies. There is a 3-pack.
I'm gonna have to look it up. You
Okay.
keep talking, I'll look it up.
Yeah, of the Cornish pixie, Mandrake. Mandrake was in there too, and something else I can't recall right now. But yeah. So there's all of a sudden there's this huge potential for a practical lesson, and you get excited about it. Except that Lockhart doesn't teach them anything.
Right. Okay, it's hold on, interrupt you.
Yep.
It's a Cornish pixie, a mandrake, and a Grinlow.
Grinley-Low.
Grinley-Low. Okay, which I do not know what that is yet.
Yep. We haven't hit them yet.
Okay.
So yeah. The first two are in this book, which actually these 2 chapters. So yeah, little blue thing has wings. All sorts of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we have this great chance for a practical lesson, and Lockhart doesn't teach him anything. They start destroying the classroom, and he runs away. Like, oh, class is over. Here, and like to make it even worse, like he doesn't stay and clean it up. He doesn't try to do anything. He just runs away and on top of it has the gall to say, "Hey, you 3, you students that I'm supposed to be teaching, that I didn't actually teach you anything about these creatures. You stay here and clean this up for me."
Right.
What?
To be fair, Matt, he did try to use a spell.
Yeah.
I don't know what spell he was trying to use. Whatever it was, it didn't work, and then he abandoned ship after that. But he did attempt something.
Okay, so
I think.
he definitely did.
Okay.
Um, I want to bring that one up because this is one of those that typically the spells that they use, especially the ones that work,
Mm,
are like Latin based.
yes. This
Um,
sounded made up.
yes, but
Okay.
if you just look at it, I'm not sure if okay, I have to ask, was Val reading this one to you?
Yes.
Okay, so if you just look at it, you're just going to blow by it because it's a bunch of nonsense.
Right.
Whether it's Latin or not, you're not going to
Sure.
understand.
I mean, the
This
other spells that we've heard are just like I. Sure. Okay. Whatever.
this one looks like it could be Latin,
Hmm.
but I'm pretty sure it's not.
Yeah.
And so we said these are Cornish pixies.
Hmm.
So the spell he tries to use is PESKI PIKSI. And pester. Okay, well, we'll just start with that first. So that was the first word.
Right.
It's very cleverly spelled,
Uh huh.
but if you break it up into two smaller words, you get pesky
Pesky pixie.
pixie.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
That's how I scrambled it in my head when Val read it. I'm like,
Exactly.
but then
Exactly.
at the same time, I'm like, well, maybe the spell is to wrangle in pixies. I don't know how specific the spells are.
And then the second one is pester no me.
Yeah.
Um.
Okay, Lockhart, we have to have a talk here.
Yeah. That doesn't even quite work in English, but very very well written, if you ask me.
Yes.
I very much enjoy the little hints in there,
Hmm.
and like it just if that's what Lockhart is trying to use, come on.
You're right.
And if that's the only thing he has to use against these creatures,
Hmm.
that's his only option. I mean, okay, they did knock his wand out of his hand.
Sure.
It makes things a little tougher.
Right.
But he's this trained wizard who's written all these books and done all these great things, and
He was also stupid enough to let them all out at the same time. Not even
Yeah.
like one is like a demonstration. He's just like,
Sure,
let's just open
sure.
all of them.
Yep,
It was chaos, Matt.
absolutely.
I'm going to go back to this because I feel like it's time to start reevaluating this stance that I've had reading through the first book. And it kind of got cleared up at the end of the first book. And I had to apologize to some people.
Yep.
How did Lockhart get this job? Who did he trick? I do not believe for a second Dumbledore is dumb enough to fall for this guy's shtick. He's a sideshow carny, traveling circus con artist, and I do not understand how he got in the position to teach defense against the. Why is this job in particular held by the worst people to have this job?
Yeah. Yeah.
Are they purposely? I feel like a part of me is just like, okay, do I trust Dumbledore again? Like, is he losing his mind? Like, sure, like the first time, it kind of worked out in the end or whatever, and I felt bad for accusing him of not really know what he's doing at his school. But then this happened, and it's like, okay, you hired this guy because what? He wrote some books? Dumbledore, come on now. Who wrote the glowing recommendation letter to get this guy a job? That's who I want to know. But then I'm thinking, maybe he's just doing this to mess with Snape because he knows Snape wants this job badly.
Yep.
So he's just going to keep hiring these people who, like the last guy was, he was kind of faking it, but he, I can't think of the word, not mumble, not stuttering. He would stutter.
Yep.
He was like afraid of everything. And he was supposed to be teaching the dark arts. I don't know if Snape knew that he was like pretending or faking it. It didn't seem like he did. So like Snape, I feel, was probably like, this guy's incompetent. How is he teaching defense of the dark arts? This should be my job. I hate potions. Why am I still teaching this class? This sucks. I'm going to be mad at everybody. I'm super emo right now and I just hate my life. So then Quirrell's out. Then he brings in Lockhart. And Snape's like, are you kidding me? This guy, of all people, this is the guy teaching this class, right? And Dumbledore's like in the back, like snickering to himself, like, Snape, sorry, sucker. Like he's just like purposely messing with him because he's Dumbledore and he has like this weird sense of humor. And I don't know which theory I'm more on board with, but either one at this point is like Dumbledore's just incompetent of picking legit teachers for the jobs that they're supposed to have, or he's just 100% messing with Snape for some just hilarious reason.
Sure. I like it.
He got punked. Like there's gonna be like a backstage camera crew with Snape one of these days and just like, oh, you got punked. Ashton Kutcher pops out. I don't know. One of those two, Matt. I have no other explanation how this guy got hired.
All right.
And how he was allowed to just dictate that every student bought like these 10 books that are coincidentally his books that he wrote. Like conflict of interest, just a little bit. I'm mad. I'm mad about the whole thing. And I kind of, now the more I think about it and flesh this out in my head, I really want Dumbledore just to be messing with Snape. Like, I think that's going to be, like, the most hilarious avenue for this.
Okay.
Just one giant ruse. Just to, like, every year, like, they just go through a different teacher. And it's just, like, increasingly worse.
All right.
Like, next, like, Hagrid's going to get hired to be, like... and Snape's like, are you kidding me? Like, he's not even... He got expelled from the school. And he's hired. Like, what are you doing? So funny. I don't know. Lockhart, he's a mess. Like, I don't know. At this point, maybe he's pretending too. Maybe he's just putting on a show for whatever reason. You know, he's going the other route of like goody two shoes and like the bumbling. Okay. I don't know.
Okay, I was wondering which way you're going with that. I was like, how's he pretending?
Like he's just putting on a front because Voldemort has him in his back pocket too. Maybe he's hiding behind his glorious teeth. I don't know, Matt. I so many different ways.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
I told you I had some things to say about this.
Yeah, you definitely did.
But that was the end of the chapter, pretty much.
Yeah, that was the end.
Kind of the three of them just looking around like, are we really doing this for this guy? And Hermione's like making excuses for him.
Exactly.
And Ron and Harry are like, seriously? Like, you're smarter than that.
Yeah, but she starts cleaning up.
Yeah. Because, of course.
She knows what to do.
Jeez Louise, Matt. I don't... So now I'm just like, what's going to happen to this? Like, I need to follow this guy around. And he thinks Harry is obsessed with getting on the front page news. And there's so many things about this guy, Matt. Like, he hurts my head a little bit. And I'm mad at Dumbledore. Like, I need an explanation. And I'm not getting it yet. So we need to move on.
All right. We can do that.
Got me all worked up, Matt.
All right. Well, we'll let you unwind a little bit here.
Okay.
We have an email. Just one email. Once again, from our dear friend, Atari Alex.
Hi, Alex.
And I'm not entirely sure. We may have slightly offended him last week.
Uh-oh.
It's kind of a fine line, probably, but dearest Joshua and Matthew,
I did call him Alexander, didn't I?
As a follow-up to my last email, I would like to clarify 2 points. First, while it is very convenient that you have your recording schedule outlined for your loyal listeners, I often forget to check when the next recording date is and will find myself behind on reading. So, speaking for myself, a reminder tweet the day before you record to jog my memory and get me to read would be highly appreciated. Second, last week, I said the recap of the story from the Philosopher's Stone wasn't particularly well done. While the information provided was necessary and succinct, I feel that it was very forced into the narrative of the chapter and made for a disjointed read. I think a one or two page prologue at the beginning of the book would have worked better. But perhaps I'm the only one who thinks that, and I'm about 18 years too late to complain about it anyway. Um, as for chapter 5 and 6, I don't really have much to say. Harry and Ron are unbelievably stupid, and Lockhart is so full of himself that it's almost funny, but it's really just annoying. So instead of giving detailed thoughts, I'm going to list some mostly snarky questions I've thought of while rereading the series. Feel free to answer them or leave them to the listeners to answer themselves.
Okay. Before you get to those,
Yes.
I want to respond to the first 2 points.
Yes.
One, yes, we could absolutely do better at tweeting out when we're going to record and what chapters to have read by the recording. We could definitely do a better job at that. I 100% agree with you, Alex. My apologies. I know, Matt, you probably feel the same way as well. We do have the schedule. It's up on the website.
Yep.
But, we can use social media to our benefit. 100%.
We're always looking for ways to improve, and that should be an easy one.
Yes. 2, Alex, yeah, I agree. Too much recap. And like I said, I will deal with it for the second book. But if this continues every single book, we're definitely going to have issues. But the second book, I will tolerate it. I wasn't happy with it, but I acknowledge why it existed and why it was necessary. So I do a prologue. Like, I don't.
Yeah, I do appreciate that he did give us an alternative, which I personally hadn't really thought about.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, a short prologue would definitely probably it would do the trick. Like, if you haven't read this before, here's what you need to know.
Sure. And I feel like everybody would still probably read it anyway, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like it's there in the book. You're like, well, I might as well. I mean, it's
but then it
4
would
pages.
be there and done, as opposed to, like you said, it comes up like every reading.
Sure.
So like every 2 chapters, there's a little couple sentences in there. If you just threw that all in the prologue, it'd be out of the way.
Right. Okay, let's get to his snarky questions.
So yeah, there is a long list of questions here. I do want to read them off.
Okay.
But I'm thinking we probably don't have time to answer them all on air. At least not this week. So
okay.
Yeah. If people want to write in and answer these questions, or if people want to just throw a tweet our way with an answer to a question, feel free.
Sure.
But some of them are actually interesting. Some of them are, I mean, like you said, they're very snarky. So,
are all these questions about chapters 5 and 6 specifically, or the story up until now?
We'll go the story up until now, probably, and a lot of them just about the world, even.
Okay.
So, where do students get their hair cut when they're at Hogwarts? Do the students ever exercise? I don't think riding a broom burns a lot of calories.
And see, I had brought that up before because I was concerned with, like, whether or not, like, you had to have some sort of physical ability to go faster on a broom. Like, do you swing your legs to go faster? Like a swing.
Sure.
It's a good question, Alex. I want to know the same thing. I mean, the movie definitely doesn't depict any sort of physical inertia to get it going. So
yeah.
Walking to and from classes, does that count as exercise?
How do the Weasleys or any other wizarding family unfamiliar with Muggle money pay their property taxes, or are they defrauding the British government? You see where I'm going with these here?
Yep.
Where do the professors go when school's not in session? Do they have a house that they only inhabit for 3 months of the year? Do they have families that they ignore for 3/4 of the year? Or do they live in the castle all summer like Johnny in The Shining?
Right. I need to know this.
Why do wizards feel so sorry for muggles not having magic? We could have Googled Nicholas Flamel and found out the Dumbledore and the Philosopher's Stone in about 30 seconds, eliminating a huge part of the first book. They need to get off their high horses. If you enchanted more cars to fly, could you have Rocket League Quidditch? Speaking of which, have you seen Real life Rocket League.
No, but I feel like I need to now.
Yeah. Um, they use real cars. Um, I forget. It might just be like a giant beach ball or something.
Oh, like one of those inflatable
Yeah.
giant balls. Yeah.
And then the goalies are like giant. I can't think of what they're called now. It's a big construction vehicle with the arm and the bucket on it.
Oh, like a backhoe?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the goalies are these giant backhoes.
That's awesome.
And they're zipping around this field, and like you see these cars going along, and like, wait, they're gonna crash into each other. Like, and I don't think in the video I saw, I don't think any of them actually crash. But like that, it's almost like it should be a demolition derby, the way real Rocket League is played.
Sure. It's probably
Anyway.
like the next evolution of demolition derbies.
There you go. Hey, if we can bring Quidditch to the real world, why not? Quidditch. Do wizards have magical versions of other games? We have Wizard Chess. How about Wizard Checkers or Wizard Candyland, Wizard Monopoly, Wizard Battleship, Wizard Settlers of Catan? I don't know how the last one worked, but I'd love to try it.
Wizards Cards Against Humanity?
I don't know how you make that wizard either.
I'm sure that's played in the Leaky Cauldron at some point.
Oh. Last but most importantly, how does Hogwarts feed and house several hundred people, plus pay salary to the employees, but not charge tuition?
Well, we don't know if they charge tuition or not.
Is Harry paying?
He might be. I mean, we know that he took a whole pocket full of money. We don't know what happened to all the money.
Would the Weasleys be able to afford that?
They probably have like scholarship programs.
All right. Personally, I did think about that one a little bit, and like a lot of it, I think, can be explained away with magic.
Yeah.
Like I have a feeling they can almost create food, or
Sure.
at least like make crops grow faster.
Which then, here's the thing. Like, you start playing with the notion of they don't need money to run the school because they could just use magic to survive and do all the stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then, like, why are the shopkeepers charging money for things? Because
Well,
in theory, they could use magic themselves.
but not everyone is skilled at making magical items. Like, not everybody can make wands.
Right, but I mean, but why would he need money, though?
To buy other magical items that he can't make.
But why would any of them need money, then?
To pay each other for the other magical items. Well, sure, they could. I mean, you're basically bringing it down to why don't they work on a barter system?
Yeah.
Why don't we work on a barter system? We used to.
Yeah.
Why don't we anymore?
We like to say that we're $3 trillion in debt. That's why. That doesn't work on a barter system.
Yeah.
Good questions, though, Alex.
Yeah. They finished this off. Hopefully you found that enjoyable and it didn't go on too long. I'll probably think of more in the future, so look out for those. In the meantime, I'll try to enjoy the books for what they are and not try to overanalyze too much. So yes, thank you, Alex.
I encourage overanalyzing. I think 14 episodes in, I feel like that's a necessity with these books. I feel like they deserve to be looked at with a with an awkward stare sometimes and a raised eyebrow and trying to figure them out.
And especially when we're doing this, like you said, 18 years later.
Right.
What do we got to lose?
Yeah. Well, credibility. Respect. Other than that, nothing.
All right.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
This has been a fun episode, Matt. I appreciate you taking time out of your vacation to do this. I apologize for attending a preseason NBA game to mess up the recording schedule, but I'm glad we got it in.
Yes, I'm very glad we got it in this week and didn't have to postpone it any further or skip it altogether.
Sure. The internet on the island seemed to hold up for the most part.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so.
So yeah, it's been a pleasure. Next week we will be covering chapters 7 and 8.
There's your warning, Alex.
But if I know Alex, he probably won't hear this podcast for another couple of weeks. So we will do a better job to tweet out reminders that we're going to be recording, what chapters we're going to be talking about.
Yep.
Maybe encourage some emails as well. We're going to work on it. I promise you that.
Yeah, I already noticed this week. I purposely I had a couple people write me beforehand, and then some after the fact that I did it. Put out the Muggle poll earlier, and I'm going to try to put it out at a regular time.
Right. It also helped that I delayed the podcast a week. I did, so.
Well, yeah, except I didn't know that at the time. So by the time we had that all figured out, the poll had ended.
Sure.
So, but yeah, had I known that, that would have worked out well too.
Yeah.
But yeah, with that will be coming along too. So
we will work on it, is what we're saying.
Yep, it's work in progress.
That's all we can promise at this point. But yeah, we'll be back next week. Chapters 7 and 8 of Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I just think it's just one, not plural.
Just one.
Yeah. One burrow, one chamber.
Lots of secrets.
Lots of secrets. So many secrets. You can find me personally on Twitter at The Noise, NOYSE. And then be sure to follow the show on Twitter at Tales from GH. If you give us a follow, I promise we'll do better at using it to our advantage for you guys out there. Matt, where can people find you?
You can find me personally on Twitter at As a Matter of Matt. Or if you want to contact the show, you can write to talesfromgodrichollow@gmail.com. That's where all the emails should go. Once again, I always filter them in case you want to write something spoilery, or just to me, or whatever the case may be. Emails there.
Muggles don't deserve to see the emails. Let's just throw it out there.
I pass them along when necessary.
Absolutely. And then Tales from Godric's Hollow at .com is the website. You can find the recording schedule. You can find all the episodes directly on there as well if you want to just play them right there from your browser. But we do appreciate any reviews on iTunes, subscriptions, and downloads and everything like that. The more you guys interact with that kind of stuff, definitely puts us in a better mood, puts smiles on our faces, but more importantly, it brings in new listeners to the show to interact with us on polls and emails and Twitter and that kind of stuff. So we want to build a fun little community here of people reading Harry Potter, whether it's the first time or the 70th time. So
yep,
yeah, we appreciate all that for sure. Matt, go enjoy the rest of your vacation, my friend.
I will do that.
I'm gonna spend the next week thinking about Dumbledore just punking Snape for no other reason than his own sick amusement.
All right.
And I'm gonna use it to laugh a few times, I think, because it's funny. But until next week, Muggle out.
Mischief managed.